We got the baddest man in the world, backed by popular demand, and I'm referring to Patrick P. Money Down, the baddest man alive. Pat, you back, man? How you feeling?
I'm feeling great. Spring football starting this Friday. I'm as eager as anyone to get back to it.
Absolutely. Patrick Dowd here, breaking news reporter, analyst for Touchdown Alabama Magazine, back in here to talk on more of these positional breakdowns. Spring football taking place for Bama on Friday. So we get into topic number one of the conversation, that being those positional breakdowns. We continue here offensively after discussing the backup quarterback role and the running backs and the wide receivers. We've made it to the big guys, the offensive line. And me personally, I kind of fancy myself a big man in a slender man's body, even though at times it may not feel that way, but kind of fancy myself as such. And Pat, when you look at just this room here, no more Doug Marrone. Eric Wolford assumes the job, coming over here from Kentucky to coach this offensive line at Alabama. We saw what he did for the Wildcats. It was an offensive line that had Chris Rodriguez Jr. running like crazy, over 1,300 yards rushing. That group for the Wildcats. Joe Moore Award finalist for Alabama after winning the Joe Moore Award in 2020. Not a finalist this past season. So fans have a lot of expectations here on Wolford, trying to see, can he bring a lot of that nasty, dominant physicality that the fans want to see from Alabama's offensive line?
Well, I think he could. He has a lot of experience in the SEC, and he's much more in line with like that sort of old-school Alabama offensive line mentality. I know Doug Marrone was criticized this past season. He couldn't really figure it out until near the end of the year, but even then it was still a little inconsistent. I think Wolford is a better fit for this team. And with this group, I think he has a good chance to get back to that sort of mentality.
Already some positive things coming out of the fourth quarter program. When you talk about players and Coach Wolford, they like him. They really feel like he can bring that edge, that swagger, that toughness that Coach Saban wants to see out there on the field. But Alabama, Pat, also graduating some guys to the next level. Evan Neal, who will be looked at as more than likely the number one overall pick in this upcoming draft, off to the NFL. A tremendous career on his end. Chris Owens, who was at Alabama for 6 seasons, came in 2016, but now both of these two off to the next level.
Yeah, and honestly, replacing Evan Neal is an extremely tall task. It's not necessarily possible to replace the number one overall pick in the NFL draft, but you know, they have the work cut out for them, and they have some talented guys behind them. I know Chris Owens was a very experienced player. Losing him is a big blow as well. So it's going to be on a couple young guys and a couple guys who've been in the program to really step up in the spring.
So here we go, Pat. We're looking at these guys who've been in the program and maybe some young, fresh names that can get into the field here on the field, create that competition, foster that competition, and get some playing time. So for me, as we did the last time with the wide receivers, we're going to have our projections here to start spring football. Now, of course, these are not set in stone. You can expect some fluctuations, some moving pieces and parts. But just to start spring ball, the first couple of days or so, we'll get into kind of our projections, who we feel like could be the starting five. And I guess for me, Coach Saban likes to have his experienced guys out there first, whether these guys have played big game experience on the offensive line or maybe haven't played, but they know the terminology, they know the system, they know how to get things done, or what it looks like to get things done. So for me, from left to right, I would look at Amari Kite at left tackle, Javion Cohen at left guard, Seth McLaughlin at center, Emil Ekiyor Jr. at right guard, and Damian George at right tackle. Once again, this is not set in stone, but one thing you know about Coach Saban is he likes to get his experience out there first, I guess to give them a chance to fail, to see, do they really know what they're doing? You've been in the program for X amount of years. Let's see what you've been learning, what you've been gleaning, what have you been picking up from guys before you and the coaching staff. But that would just kind of be my five.
Yeah, it's not a bad five. I mean, Nick Saban in the past, even this past year, they had Kendall Randolph, I think, at tackle, too.
That steal was kind of weird, though.
Yeah, I've seen him wear like 85 for his entire career. I've seen him line up a right tackle. But, you know, he does give the older guys in the roster a little bit of a chance to kind of fail, like you said, in the spring. But, I mean, you and I have both have similar lists. I'm going to start with mine, going from left to right. I also have Amari Kite at left tackle. I have Javion Cohen at left guard, Seth McLaughlin at center, Emil Ekiyor right guard. But I have J.C. Latham at right tackle.
He's got the 2021, the big-time recruit at tackle. tackle here, Pat?
Yeah, I do. I mean, he's probably their best offensive line prospect that they've had since Evan Neal. And I mean, this is a guy who came in very highly touted, and last season was served as much more of a reserve role on Alabama's offensive line. I think he was one of the first guys off the bench at guard, and I think Nick Saban is going to want him to have sort of a similar career path to Neal, because everyone knows that Neal started at guard, learned the system that way, and then eventually shifted out to tackle. But I think the spring ball is going to be a big opportunity for Latham to get reps at tackle. I think he needs them, especially at this level.
So, Pat, you bring up J.C. Latham. Now, Tommy Beckermeyer also came in 2021 class, extremely hyped up, coming from Texas. His father, Blake Beckermeyer, was a Texas legend, former All-American at the University of Texas, played 9 seasons in the NFL, and fans are wondering, Beckermeyer's got to be the guy. Tommy came in, 5-star, big-time tackle prospect. This is a big spring for him. Do you see him fighting his way in or pushing his way in? What are your thoughts on Tommy Beckermeyer this spring?
I mean, playing good football runs in his family, so I think he's a very talented player. Last I checked, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, I think he's in at 305 pounds right now.
Right there, yeah.
Yeah, so he's a little bit lighter than I think you would like to have at tackle, especially in the SEC. I think he is talented enough to play, but it's just going to be a matter of can he beat out guys like Latham and Amari Kite for that role, and even Damian George might be in the mix too.
When you look at Beckermeyer, of course, also when he came to Alabama and in that 2021 class, he came in with an injury, so probably used last season to get healthy, get acclimated, and get fresh in terms of into the system, into the fray of things where the offensive line is concerned. But now going back to Latham here, you have him at tackle. He is very versatile because he can play tackle. He can also play guard. Alex Netherwood came in as a highly rated tackle in 2017, but started off his career at guard before tackle. The same thing with Evan Neal, as you mentioned. Could you see the same thing for Latham, where they kick him inside to guard first and then put him back out for tackle, or do you feel it as more as, look, he's got to be used to tackling at this point?
Well, I think at this point he's got to be used to tackle, because I think Alabama, he's not going to beat out Emil Ekiyor or Javion Cohen, I don't think, in spring ball or in the fall. So I think he's a much more natural tackle, standing at 6'6", 330. Alabama's going to need that kind of size out there. So I think now is the time to move him out of tackle, especially he's a 5-star player, and with the transfer portal now, who knows what happens if he waits one more season. So you kind of got that's just the new age of college football. These 5-star recruits, you kind of got to play them right away if you want them to hang around.
Now, when you look at here, just the expectation, Pat, of this offensive line, like I mentioned in the earlier beginning, this was a group, this was an Alabama team that 2020 with Kyle Flood won the Joe Moore Award with guys like Alex Netherwood, Evan Neal, Landon Dickerson, Deontay Brown, and Mac Jones was sacked, 13 times? And then you fast forward to this past season, Bryce Young sacked 39 times, and you didn't get the center right to week 12, and right tackle was a turnstile, and there was some up and down issues all season with that group, and you go from a Joe Moore Award winner to not even a finalist the next season. What are your expectations for this group, where it's got to bring some nasty back? There's got to be, an attitude adjustment. There's got to be some power and some confidence with this unit here. What are your expectations for this group?
Well, the only thing I want to see is them to have some sort of level of consistency. Even if it's consistently average, it's consistent, because there's too many peaks and valleys with this offensive line last season. They play really good one week, and then the next week they
that Georgia game in the national championship, they looked outstanding.
That Georgia at the SEC championship, but a couple weeks prior against Auburn, they were a disaster. I just want some sort of level of consistency and continuity in this unit. I think Nick Saban will want the same.
Absolutely, and that was against Georgia in the SEC championship, where they looked incredible. But like you mentioned, Pat, the Iron Bowl, it was not where it needed to be. The national championship against Georgia, Bryce Young was getting harassed and sacked and pressured, and just tons of games in the 2021 season when you looked at, where is that toughness, where is that blue collar, where's that it factor when it comes down to this front group. And that is something that Eric Wolford is going to enjoy the challenge of, is bringing that back, is restoring that back. And one thing that Coach Saban wants to see brought back and restored back. So that's going to be fun to watch there. People, Alabama's offensive line, can it get back to that dominant sense of play, to that outstanding sense of play, to that Joe Moore Award mentality. Me personally, I do agree with Pat. I want to see consistency in a positive way throughout the entire season. But another thing I want to see is just these guys being able to know I can put my hands on a defensive lineman and be able to impose my will. Because there were moments in the early part of the Nick Saban era, it didn't matter if it was Chance Warmack or DJ Fluker or Barrett Jones or Andre Smith or Antoine Caldwell. Those guys knew I can put my hands on defensive linemen and I can drive them to the ground. I can maul them to the ground. I can pancake them. We can impose our will on this opposing defense. So looking forward to seeing some of that here in spring football.